Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audi Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be taking a look at the VELOGAMES UAE Tour, the last round of this warm-up series, which, you know, George, if you are watching this, I think we're all very appreciative of this warm-up series, and I really hope that this comes back into future editions of VELOGAMES. So let's try and end this off with a really strong performance. So let's take a look at the riders and decide who are going to be the best ones for you to be putting onto your team. The most expensive rider is, of course, Remco Evenepoel at 28 credits, which is a lot for Evenepoel, it must be said. And I think that it could be worthwhile, especially when you consider that Evenepoel is likely to win the TT as well. So he will be competing in 3 stages through that sense, if you consider them the 2 mountaintop finishes as well, plus the overall GC points that he'll get at the end as well if he wins. Evenepoel could easily get somewhere near 900 points maybe if things go all his way and he was to win all of the mountaintop finishes as well and GC. Realistically, he might get somewhere near 800 if things didn't quite go perfectly. So Evenepoel's a good one, but you have to also consider that being so expensive and considering that he's not categorically the GC favourite as well, like there is some good competition here. Is it better to spread your points out a bit more evenly? We've seen that being a very frequent characteristic of these warm-up races, is that the most expensive rider isn't usually worth it, unless your name's Tadej Pogačar, of course. Bear that in mind when picking Evenepoel, it might be better to spread your points a bit more evenly. Other GC contenders, Bilbao, of course, is a good one at 22. I think that he should be finishing inside the top 5. However, you are also given the option of having Jay Vine or Adam Yates as well at 22 credits. And of the 3, I'd say that I'm most favouring Adam Yates because he has won this race in the past. He always finishes on the podium in this race as well. His TT's okay, so I think he might not gain as many points as Evenepoel in that sense, just because he won't get the points from the TT. Jay Vine is a good time trialist. Of course, he's the Australian champion, so perhaps you could consider him instead. I think it's very possible that the podium could be Evenepoel, Jay Vine and Adam Yates in some order. And I think, therefore, that all these guys are very good options. I would perhaps favour picking the UAE riders over Bilbao, just because I think they have a stronger time trial and they have a stronger team around them as well. So you'll get those team classification assist points as well throughout the race. So I'd favour the UAE riders personally. McNulty is an interesting one because I think that he could do well in GC, but realistically UAE are going to need riders to be setting pace on these climbs, and McNulty I think will fall into that role quicker than somebody like Jay Vine or Adam Yates might. So therefore McNulty I'm apprehensive about picking because I think he might just be in a very expensive domestique. However, saying that, he should still finish inside the top 10 in my eyes. We then get on to some of the sprinters, and the sprinters are just a really hard one to give some advice about because sprinting, as we all know, is really a game of bit of chance, bit of luck in there as well, really good, you know, positioning and stuff like that, and it's just hard to get. It's hard to say that this sprint is going to be doing categorically better than everybody else because the sprint field is so high caliber in this race that likely it'll be multiple riders winning stages rather than one sprinter just winning all 4 of the sprint stages. Saying that, Caleb Ewan is one of the few riders who has a designated team just for a lead out. Some teams also have GC riders mixed into their team, so Caleb Ewan would be a good one because he's got the whole team around him. And another rider who has the whole team around him would be Dylan Groenewegen. So I really like Caleb Ewan and Groenewegen because of that. But then there are some other really fast sprinters in here. Guys like Tim Merlier. Of course, he won a stage of a Tour of Oman. It must be noted that wasn't against the most difficult of sprint fields. So therefore, that wasn't like a really high caliber win in my eyes. And he also doesn't have the greatest lead out train here. There's no Morkov here, for example. So Merlier's a good one, and I think that he should probably win a stage here, but just bear in mind that his lead out isn't massively strong. Sam Bennett, I think, has a really strong lead out, especially considering that he's got Ryan Mullen, Shane Archibald and Danny Van Poppel. I think that Bennett's a really good one. He looked really strong at San Juan as well. And then some other sprinters, there's Olav Koy, the youngster. He did really good in this race last year. At 14, he's a bit more expensive, especially considering that his lead out train, once again, isn't that strong, considering that they also have some GC riders here. There's also Bauhaus. I think that he's quite underrated at 12, could be a good one. He usually pulls a couple of good results out of the bag. Demar, we haven't seen anything of Demar so far this year, so interesting to see. He does have a very designated lead out to him with only one GC rider mixed in there. Gaviria, again, kind of similar to Demar. These two really don't hit the top 3 in sprints. They generally hover around 5th place to 10th place, depending on their kind of look in the sprints. Gerben Tayson as well will be another sprinter. Welsford at 12 is a good one as well for the sprints. He was looking really fast at San Juan. He's got a decent lead out train here, and I think that the very flat and untechnical nature of the sprints will really favour Welsford's high power and high speed. So I think that Welsford's a really good one at 12. And that's kind of the sprinters, but I'll go back up and look at the GC riders. Of course, we've got Sepp Kuss and Lutsenko. I'd probably avoid them just because Lutsenko didn't look good at Tour of Oman, and Kuss doesn't really have very good TT, so neither of them are particularly great options. I think you're better off picking the sprinters. Bouchard, of course, has gone up in price since Oman, but again, quite expensive at 14. Cavendish I actually skipped over accidentally. I'm just not too sure about Cav. He obviously hasn't gelled with his lead-out train, which isn't very experienced, so therefore Cav, I'm a bit unwilling to pick just because I'm uncertain about his lead-out strength. Gloag, of course, he was 6 points at Valenciana, now he's 14, but it is quite expensive. I'd probably say that that's not quite worthwhile. I think Groenewegen would be a lot more worthwhile. Poels, a decent one, but I think he'll be working for Bilbao, so probably avoid that. Buchmann didn't do great at Oman, so I don't expect great things here. Fulsang, again, kind of towards the twilight of his career. I don't really expect much here from him. Luke Plapp, I am interested to see what he can do. He finished top 10 in this race last year in GC. A strong time trialist, probably the GC leader for the Ineos Grenadiers, so really interested to see what the Australian champion can do. Soler will be a domestique. Tarame, good at Oman, but lacks a strong TT, so he'll probably finish in the fringes of the top 10, perhaps in GC. Moving down into the 10-point riders, you've got Aberastori, Einhorn, Lipins, Milano, all sort of BC tier sprinters. I think Milano is probably the best one, considering that he won a stage of the Vuelta, of course, in the last stage last year. Leknesson might go for GC for DSM, but I don't think he's good enough at climbing to really compete at a high enough level. Rubio will be the GC option for Movistar, but will of course hemorrhage time during the TT. And then there's Schmidt, Storer, Tolhoek. I'm not a big fan of either of these guys, to be honest. I don't think they really fulfill the parcours too well in this race. 8-point riders. My favourite one is Ben Tullett, actually. I think that he would be a very strong choice for Ineos. I think that he is going to probably break out sometime this year and do a really strong performance in a stage race. I don't see why UAE Tour wouldn't be that race, considering that he's a very good time trialist and he's done pretty well so far this year. He's got some good form, and I think that him alongside Luke Plapp would be the GC choices for Ineos. They have Kim Hajduk and Elia Viviani, both of whom are sprinters, and I think you could pick either one of those, especially considering that Viviani didn't look that great at San Juan. You also have some, like, I probably wouldn't pick the Movistar guys or Sepulveda really, or Holham Vanuka. I just don't see them making that much of a difference in the race. 6-point riders, some of my favourite ones. I like Mikkel Bjerg just because I think he will finish top 10 in the TT, but also get assist points from his fellow GC contenders in the team. Brenner, a GC option for Team DSM. I think that I'm expecting some big things from him at some point in his career, considering that he looks so good in the junior ranks. So hopefully this might be the race where that happens, but a bit risky perhaps banking on him to try and do something in this race. Hannanen didn't live up to the hype that I was thinking in Oman, so I probably would avoid him. Michael Hessman, very good last year in the under-23 ranks. Strong time trialist and also a strong climber, so he fulfills the bracket of somebody who should do well here, but will he just be a domestique for Thomas Gloag and Sepp Kuss? More than likely yes, but it's worth mentioning him anyway. Then you also have Mezgec, who is the lead-out man for Dylan Groenewegen, so he might finish in the top 10 in a couple of sprints just accidentally because of that. Matthew Riccatello did good in GC. I think he finished 11th in GC in San Juan, so he might do something good again here. Josh Tarling, new signing for Ineos Grenadiers, finished second in the time trial in the Étoile de Bessèges, so I'm expecting a good TT from Josh Tarling in that stage 2 TT. Really looking forward to seeing what he could do. Perhaps not worth it as a 6-point rider, but still it's a very interesting rider. I think that one of the best 6-point riders would be Harold Tejada, who was dropping his teammate Lutsenko in the Tour of Oman. I think that Tejada could finish top 15 in GC in this UAE Tour. despite the fact that he doesn't have a very good TT. Somebody who does have a TT, and I think this is the best 6-point rider, is Antonio Tiberi. Strong time trial, climbs quite well as well. So I think that Tiberi is the best one. Could certainly finish top 10 in GC if he's got some good climbing legs on him. I think a lot of people will be picking Tiberi. He's a very popular one. Ben Zvihoff finished 15th in GC in Oman, so clearly has some decent climbing legs, but he might just be a domestique for Emmanuel Buchmann. Trek haven't released their full start list yet, but Mark Brustenga is a sprinter and a good one for Trek Segafredo. Of course, they do have Aberastori and Lipens in there as well, so he might not get his own opportunities, but worth mentioning him anyway. Luca Kolnagi is a sprinter for Bardiani, but more of a reduced sprinter from like a more of a puncher field, so perhaps might not compete on too high of a level. Derek Guy might do good in the TT. He's like the Canadian champion at the moment, I think. You have Johan Price Pedersen, who finished 9th in the TT last year in the UAE Tour, so he could certainly finish in the top 10 again in this race. Oh, I forgot to mention Tobias Lund Andersen. He got a couple of good sprint results at the Vuelta San Juan when Walsrud went down with a crash, so perhaps consider him as a 4-point rider. I think the best 4-point rider is actually Callum Scottson. He showed in Valenciana that he was a really strong climber. I think he finished about 15th in GC, so I think that he could certainly finish top 20 in GC here. He's got a decent time trial considering that he's come from the track, and therefore I think he would have free rein from Jaco Alula to go and try do his own GC performance when it gets to the hillier stages as well, so watch out for Callum Scottson. And then my last one would be George Steinhauser. Was really good in the under-23 ranks, but didn't live up to those results last year. So perhaps this year, considering it's a contract year for him, he might be pulling out some decent performances. And I think that at the moment, EF haven't released their team, but he could certainly be somewhat of a GC option for them in this race. And that is all the riders. Let me know in the comments down below what teams you're thinking of going with. I'm very interested to hear what you guys are all thinking. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!